Hi, everyone. Welcome to Flock Talk. I'm Erin Morgan.
And I'm Walker Ball, and we work for the members of the Ontario Sheep Farmers.
Today, we're diving into health management and issues of pregnant and lambing ewes with Emily Zur Linden, a skilled food animal veterinarian with a special interest in small ruminants and beef cattle. Welcome, Emily.
Hello, thanks for having me.
And thanks so much for joining us. Will you tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a veterinarian and how you came to specialize in ewe health and reproduction?
Sure. I grew up in Southern Ohio, so I am an import.
Cool. I didn't know that.
One of those exotic imports.
That's fantastic.
I never finished my undergrad, so I got early admission to vet school. So when I write my CVs, it's like, oh, what have you done? And I was like, I have a high school diploma and a DVM. I have no step in between. But I went to vet school at Ross University on St. Kitts Island in the Caribbean. And from there, you have to do your clinical year somewhere else. I went to Iowa State in the Midwest because they said they were good with beef cattle and pigs and, farming stuff. So I was like, oh, that's where I want to be. So I was there for a year and met my now husband there as well. And he is a Canadian and he wanted to move back to Canada. So I started searching for jobs in Canada and wound up in Southern Ontario, starting out in the beginning of 2013 and have been here ever since.
Wow. That's a really cool story.
I've been lots of places. So with that, I was looking specifically I was actually looking for a mixed animal practice that would allow me to do 75% large animal and 25% small. Because I thought, well, I do like a dog. Cats, hit or miss, but like dogs are great, And so I was looking for that, but those basically don't exist. And I wanted beef cattle over dairy. I don't particularly enjoy cattle dairy medicine. So, I was hired on at a place and I spent just over 11 years there before leaving. And now I'm with Upper Grand Vet Services. I work part-time there, but it's good. It gives me enough time out in the field doing stuff and doing things like this because now I have time to do things like this. But in that time where I was before, we did it was beef. So everybody there worked beef, and then one fella did beef and pigs, and one did beef and horses, and I did beef and everything else that anybody called about. I have seen the odd chicken. I started doing sheep and goat work then as well, and as we know, 13 years ago, the industry was not as prolific as it is now. So I kind of was able to grow with the industry as it became more popular. Instead of just having sheep and goats for the kids to have, we had more enterprises, more businesses that were structured around sheep and goats as their primary source rather than just kind of an afterthought. So I've been lucky enough to grow with that. And kind of landed me where I am now, doing a lot of small ruminant work, which is great because it's super fun. People are lovely. They're not.
Yeah, we appreciate you very much for focusing on small ruminants. It's a very needed specialty in the province of Ontario. So we appreciate you.
Yeah, of course.
So in a snapshot, what kind of work do you do with producers and students?
With producers, I do a lot of herd health. I try to focus where I work with production. Where I worked before was all production. So I have a pretty good grasp on when it's a business and how to structure decisions around not just animal health and welfare, but also making pragmatic business decisions with these things. I don't want to say that I struggle on the hobby farm pet side. It's just not one that I do very often. And I know there's a lot of people that love that. So I try to stay away from that. Even within the clinic that I work at, there are people that enjoy that side more. And I'm like, more power to you. I will stay on the production side. And, we collaborate on stuff all the time, talking about cases and where I would go and what they would do and, that kind of thing, just to try to get the most well-rounded approach. But I certainly do prefer production medicine. So herd health work, updating protocols, trying to, how can we make the most effective, most physically effective, but also cost effective decisions that we can. And then being able to review those decisions for, how much money did we gain or lose at the end of the year having implemented this protocol, and what can we change, that kind of stuff. I find being an asset to somebody's livelihood just fulfills me on a whole nother level than just like helping the animal. Like there's a whole nother side of it that just feels like I'm really making a difference here. So that's really cool.
I love that.
That is fantastic. Yeah. So we're curious to know what you would say are the most common health issues you see. Let's focus this interview more on the sort of late pregnancy and lactating ewe side of things. So what do you say are the most common health issues you see at that stage?
Oh my gosh, late lactation. I feel like if I could rank them 1, 2, and 3, all 3 of them are pregnancy toxemia. Like it is so common. I don't know a farm that has not had problems with this. So whether they're dairy or meat operations, I run into it. So I was trying to think of what other things, and it all generally comes back down to pregnancy toxemia. So when we're talking about pregnancy toxemia, we're really talking about energy imbalance. The animal, the ewe is using more sugar, more carbohydrate to grow babies than she is taking in. So we have an energy imbalance, right? So when the body needs more energy and it doesn't have enough carbs to work on, it starts utilizing fat. And the liver is the main driver of this process. So when I see these things happening, oftentimes we think of large litters inside a pregnant. So it could be twins, it could be triplets, it could be quads or quints. It could be, I mean, I've seen the gamut of, 6 babies, kind of thing. And so sometimes it's like, it is what it is. You can't feed a sheep enough to support the growth of 5 or 6 babies. Like it's really, really hard to do. Even in your really prolific breeds, like your Romanov breeds that are like built to do this, those babies are so small. But when this is happening in the body, 70% of lamb growth happens in the last like 4 to 6 weeks, probably more like 6 weeks of pregnancy. So we're pretty steady all the way up until that like last trimester. And then those babies explode with growth. So that means mom's energy demands skyrocket, and mom's energy demands, continue to stay high through lactation, right? That early lactation, there's still a huge energy demand. So we have to be able to feed her appropriately to match that. And they say if one baby requires like 100% nutrition, twins requires 180% nutrition, triplets is 210%. So like we are looking at like monstrous increases in nutrition going into the animal, that we also have to realize her rumen capacity to hold feed is shrinking dramatically. So you now need to have, instead of very high forage base, which you can't really get rid of because you need it for rumen health, now we have to figure out how am I going to get high amounts of energy into a smaller space. So a lot more energy dense feeds, where it's where people are giving grain, are like with molasses and like other things to just get calories in to the animal in as little space filling as possible, right? So, and I say, 1, 2, and 3 are preg tox, because 1, 2, and 3 are preg tox. Maybe 2.5 to 3 is maybe hypocalcemia, or in like the cow world, it's milk fever. Our sheep go down with problems birthing, and cattle generally go down with milk fever post birthing. So like the timing is a little different, but oftentimes our pregnancy toxemias have a low calcium component as well. So over the years, I have also learned like adding a calcium supplement either under the skin or something like that can help improve the outcomes of these girls, because we're addressing the low calcium that may not be the driver of the signs that we're seeing, but is a significant contributor to what's happening. And this, it's generally not the main thing. One time at one farm, well, probably more than that, but one time I remember at one farm there was I want to say, I don't want to say an outbreak of preg tox, but certainly close up use. They're going down. They're not responding to pregnancy toxemia treatment. And I was like, just give them calcium, just like under the skin, just give it to them. And they turned around after that. So they were primary low calcium girls. But when I talked to them about it later, or within a couple of days or something like that, ask them about it. They're their highest milk producing ewes. They had large litters inside. So we think of energy like sugars to grow babies, like to grow muscles and to grow like the body parts and make it grow. But also we have this huge demand to grow bone. We have a huge demand to start making milk. And we have like all the calcium component is also skyrocketing into what we're doing, including through peak lactation, right? So we have this huge calcium demand as well. So it does make sense that we would have a low calcium component when we start seeing milk fever, when we start seeing preg tox issues, because it's not just sugars that are being used up, like calcium is being like absolutely run down as well. So yeah, over the years, I think anymore it's kind of silly to not treat for both if you're seeing it, just because like a couple 100 mils of calcium under the skin is not terrible to do when you're already doing all these other things to her for low sugars.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Whoa. Okay. I've learned a lot. What early signs should producers be watching for? And are there any symptoms that tend to show up too late if producers aren't monitoring closely?
Yeah, early monitoring. I think one that gets excused a lot is that she's just late pregnancy, she's heavy, she's tired, she has a hard time getting up. That is a red flag. Like, these girls need to get up and get to the bunk to eat. So if it's like, man, she struggles, maybe she's just tired and that is a sign that she is struggling with energy imbalance already, or maybe the effects of low calcium and muscle weakness. So it's one of those, especially if you have to get in the pen and literally get her butt up, you pick her butt up and so she can stand, like if that's it, we're behind the 8 ball already. Like, we need to start, that girl needs to be pulled aside. She needs to start being treated for preg tox and stuff, because the symptoms don't go away, or the signs don't go away until they have their baby. They get worse because the energy drain is still in their belly until they have them. So if you're experiencing this and you're 6 weeks out still, you're in for a rough month and a half, right? If you're like 2 weeks out, we're like, okay, we got it. We can get through this. Like, timing is really important on how long these are going to go, whether or not the babies are viable at the end, whether mom is going to survive at the end. Like, if we're seeing slow to get up girls, not like that appetite seems to be going down, we got to make changes like right now, because the energy demands, they aren't slowing down, but she is, so you got to jump on those early. And if you get them where they're like already down, or some guys are really astute, and I can't say that I've seen it very often, but one guy swears that his first sign is swollen legs, which they get swollen because they're laying down a lot. So it's like swollen legs. And it's like, I love that you see that. And I love but part of being a good shepherd is looking. Like, you miss more things by not looking than by not knowing what you're looking for. Like, if you're just like, every time I'm out there, like, I'm going to look, because then you'll start noticing those fine changes, right? But if we're just like, oh, they're coming, and you just kind of quick scan, you'll miss it. So like, sometimes take that extra couple minutes to just look at your girls, But that's kind of what we're here for. We're here to look at them. But I think, those are big ones. Sometimes when they get really advanced, they start to look like neurologic sheep. So they might look blind. They might put their head against a wall or something like that. We are my guess is like, I'm gonna try to induce her just to save her life because she's on the edge. So we don't want to get that far, but really being clued into those slow to stand girls and not just excusing it as, oh, she's just tired, her belly's heavy. Not an excuse in the sheep world. Get up. You gotta go, that kind of thing. So I think that's just one to keep in your back pocket, is like, don't excuse that one away.
Awesome. So talk to us about nutrition. You mentioned that they have a high energy demand in the late stages of pregnancy and the early lactation. So when you are thinking about feeding these sheep, obviously, you've got multiples and then you've got singles, and you don't want to overfeed either. So how do you recommend handling nutrition when you've got all different, you don't know how many lambs they're carrying?
Sure. This one's tough. A lot of times we go back on flock history. What have the girls done before? Is this a girl that routinely gives you twins and triplets, or is this one that who normally gives you singles? What's the flock average? If your flock average is under 2, like, I would say we probably don't have to push as hard for the grain at the end, because a lot of times this is going to get so sideways. I'm sorry. I'm going to say this, but like, grain of salt this, people. Okay. We don't have to push so hard with the grain if we're not carrying as many babies. We have to push harder with the grain the more babies that we carry, because we need that higher, more dense feed stuff into the rumen. With that being said, most of my producers get a ration balanced for twins, because ideally we want twins. Moms who raise their babies do best with twins. Some are really good at handling multiples, like triplets and such, but that's not the norm generally. Twins, fabulous. I feel like when we start to get averages where we're asking for a lot of triplets, which we love for our meat producers, like we want those babies, right? Because we're trying to raise lambs. But we also have to recognize that we might be having more bottle babies, because sheep are really built for twins, maybe triplets off with a good mom. But if we're going to try to push for those high volume litters, then we need to start balancing rations for 2.5 babies, 3 babies, something like that. So this is where working with a nutritionist is great, because we want to take that flock history and say, on average, we have a 2.2, say we have a 2.5 drop rate and a 2.2 like wean rate, like we're still high volume, right? So like, this is where a good sheep nutritionist is going to help out with getting a ration balanced for what those ewes on average carry. Yes, that means that our ones with singles are probably going to gain some weight, but hopefully we're having a lot of twins, and so our potential for weight gain during the pregnancy is quite low. Testing our feeds and forages so we know what we're working with, because just because it's pretty doesn't mean it's good. Like, I know tons of people, pretty near every farmer's been burned by what looks good and tests very poorly, right? So we want to know what we're working with so we can create a ration that's going to be useful for our girls. If we have a ration where we have like 9% protein in a hay that looks like it should be 15, what are we doing, right? Like, we need to know the numbers so we can work accurately with the numbers. I say you're nutritionist. I don't even want to say I dabble in it. I will tell you that, like, yeah, good rule of thumb is like a pound of grain per head per day, up to 2 pounds, depending on how many babies you have. Like, I'm just saying things that like are in general okay, but like, nutritionist is the way to go. Like, let's just be fair. But sometimes those rules of thumbs are great. That also leads into, we should be getting our animals preg checked so we have an idea of when they're going to lamb, so that we know, when do we need to step up that ration? When are we in that second half of pregnancy where you're not going to go from no grain to a pound per day, or else they're going to have the shits like nobody's business and they're going to bloat and probably die. So like, this is a gradual process. So like, halfway through pregnancy, we're going to start with like a quarter of a pound for a little bit. We're going to start easing them into it, so that when we're trying to match that growth rate at the end, we've already done the work. Like, now we can step them up into that heavier ration to match baby growth. But if you do it right away, like, just shoot yourself in the foot, I suppose. Like, that's not going to work. Yeah. But yeah, so I say there's like, if I'm helping somebody who like really doesn't have access to a nutritionist and stuff, these are the numbers that I play with, but it's kind of like, please don't go over 2 pounds. Like there's no reason to go more, but somewhere between the 1 to 2, it depends on what that flock history is. Like if you really, if this, they're low prolific breeds and they only really have one, that maybe we're not pushing it that far. We just give them enough. We don't want to make fat animals because then now you have to diet them. That is hard. So let's not push the scale too far.
Right on.
Wow. Taking us through the emotions, Emily?
Oh my God, right? But then, okay, I'll say this. But then when an animal has preg tox and doesn't want to eat, you know what I'm telling her? Lucky Charms, frosted mini wheats, like something that maybe's got a little bit of fiber in it, lots of sugar. We need food, girlfriend. So what's your favorite cereal? And guys, you go down to the store, and then you're going to buy the cereal that you never buy for your kids because it's too sugary.
Yeah.
That's now barn cereal for your sheep. So,
and then your kids are in the barn eating Captain Crunch.
Your kids are in the barn eating it. Yeah. Right. I was like, but it's like, we have to try to, like, we all know when a sheep doesn't eat, they're basically dying. Like, so we got to get food into them. You got to try to get food into them. So I'm like, at this point, I don't even care. Calories in. We need something so that we don't, if we've got nothing, we're screwed. So if we can keep them eating something, we can work with that.
Wow.
But once we go off the completely anorexic, good luck, that kind of thing. Especially again, this is speaking in a production setting where I'm not transphonating animals. This has to be like, moving along, let's go, girls, you got to work for me kind of thing, right? So I'm certain in a small volume, small flock operation, some of the more intensive management strategies can come into play. But, my 900 head flock is not going to transfaunate, I don't know, however many. I also want to point out too that like, we want to push these girls, especially in the dairy world, we're pushing these girls for production, right? So if we're not teetering on the edge of a metabolic problem, we're probably not pushing them hard enough. So if we're not trying to push our girls for production in a way that maybe you're climbing the hill of acidosis or climbing the hill of preg tox, but we want to take them just to the edge, but not over, right? So if you have a couple preg tox animals, only a few, okay, we're doing it. Like you're right there. You have a couple girls who can't handle it. That's okay. Like we will do our best to get those. If we have a lot, we're not feeding them properly. But if we only have a couple, like 1 or 2, then I'm like, okay, like you're doing the thing, you're doing it well. Because you're pushing these girls to their production capabilities without pushing them over the edge. If we have too many, we're not managing them properly, if that makes sense. Like if there's a fine line between the push and the too much.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. I feel like I feel like you hit on a lot of the best management practices in that answer. Do you have any additional management practices you'd recommend to help manage or prevent additional health issues?
We always, the collective we, say, preg check and count babies. There's a very tiny window where you can be more accurate in counting fetuses, which is fine. It's not that accurate. Like one time ever I hit 100% and I was like, I'm never doing it again because I will never hit 100% again. But it's very difficult. And then if you're going to spend the time to do all of that, you need to have space to feed them differently. And so if you're going to spend the time to do all of that, yet you're not going to feed them differently, then what's the point in doing it, right? You're spending more money per head or per cost of time or however you want to measure that out to get a metric that we're not going to act on. So logistically, sometimes people ask me for it and I'm like, are you going to do anything with this? Are you going to separate out anybody I say 3 or 3+ or whatever and feed them more? And they're like, well, no, we don't really have the space for that. And I was like, well, then we're not going to do that. Like there's just no point, and not the most you need to know at that point is pregnant or open, just to feed them.
Yeah.
you know, maybe you separate the pregnants from the opens and feed those guys separately. But if you're not dividing the pregnant flock any different, then there's really no point.
Right on. So then when we are talking about dividing up the flock, talk to us about flock management, housing, grouping to manage stress in that late gestation period and in that early lactation period. What do you recommend as far as numbers and grouping and housing?
As long as they can all get to the feed bunk at the same time, that's all I care about. And whether that's out like feeding in alleyways or like around the edge of the pen or having like a feeder in the center and at the sides, like I don't really care. But we do have to remember that when a sheep is pregnant versus open, when we look at them side by side, a pregnant animal takes up significantly more space. So if your feeder rails are say you have enough space in an open group to house like 100 animals and they can all use that, great, beautiful, love that. There is no friggin' way that that's going to work in late gestation because they just don't fit. Add full fleece onto that and our numbers drop significantly lower again because we have inches of fleece on top of inches of, so you have like, I know nobody can see this, but I'm doing hand motions of like a skinny sheep. And then like she's pregnant and she like almost doubles in size. You've seen those girls that are walking ottomans. They are as wide as they are tall. And totally. Then if we have like, bless the ones that get shorn before, but the ones that don't, you've got fleece on top of that. So if you're now almost taking up 3 feeder spaces worth of head rail for one animal because she is so big. So we just have to keep that in mind that as those girls get bigger, they're needed. It's almost not even like pen space. It's really feeder bunk space because they just can't Ouija in together like they can when they're open and small. So do I have good numbers? No, but the Farm Care Council has usually some pretty good numbers on pen spacing allotments for open and pregnant or something like that. I usually follow those. But the big thing is just not to forget about head space and water space. Like the access to the bare minimum. We talked about this whole thing has been talking about lack of energy or some sort of nutritional imbalance. But if your feeder space, your living arrangements are not set up so that all your animals can eat, I don't care what you feed it. Some of those girls are going to be bullied away from it and never touch it. End of story. So if you notice that's happening too, take those bullied girls out and feed them somewhere else if you can. Again, logistically, if you have space. An old horse stall. I don't know. But you can create sheep pens in a lot of different places. They're not like goats and climb out and do whatever. Like they kind of stay if you got a box for them. So give them a box. But yeah, and sometimes you have bullies in the groups and stuff. Sometimes you can do a lot by removing the bully, but oftentimes getting like the bottom picked on ones that can't, or you notice they're slowing down, just get them out, put them somewhere else where you can watch them more closely and manage their condition better, and then continue to watch the rest of them. But, it's nicer to sometimes have the higher risk ones in a space that's easier to manage than in with the group and take the bully out.
That makes so much sense. And so mean of them to be bullying the pregnant ones. So rude.
They're also pregnant, so they're just.
Oh, okay.
Speaking as a hormonal, you're grumpy as heck when you're pregnant. I probably bullied a few people myself away from the trough.
Exactly. Excuse me. No, I'm coming through. Move. I have done that. Yes.
I commiserate.
That's amazing.
I get it.
That's amazing. Oh, so if a producer could only focus on 1 or 2 changes this season to improve ewe health outcomes, what would you say should be their top priorities?
If you don't already work closely with a nutritionist, you should start. Like, nutrition is far and away one of the most impactful things that you can try to get right for your animals. I'm talking I mean, it affects everything. We're not just talking late gestation, early lactation at this point. Minerals are so important, and they improve hoof health and immune system function and all that stuff. And so like working with a qualified nutritionist who's able to look at these things and make sure that the levels are right for the stage of production, for the animals that you have, like it's worth it time and time again, just throughout the entire longevity of the farming practice, right? Like not just those late gestation girls. Be willing and be ready to test your feed, like especially homegrown stuff, because it changes year to year, whether we're in a drought or whatever, like quality changes. The other is developing, probably with your vet, a good protocol for treating these girls. We always talk about glycol P and calcium, but there are tools that we have that producers can have to monitor whether or not the girls have it. So there's keto sticks for measuring ketones depending on the kind of stick. There's urine, blood, or milk. There's the BHB meters, like they very similar to like glucose meters for diabetic people use, where the little prick and you get a little blood drop and it reads it. I love those because it gives you a number, and then you're like, here's my graph, or here's my chart. Anything under this is okay. This to this is like low grade. Pregnancy toxemia over this is like high. So you can like tailor what your treatment protocol is by the number that comes on the machine. And like, I mean, it's not the cheapest machine out there. You can get them at Shoppers. Don't tell them you're using it on a sheep, but you can get them at Shoppers. But at least you have a number to work on, because you can test it and say, over 1.2 is clinical preg tox. And maybe she's not, doesn't even look that bad, but you're like, we got to get on her. The next time you do it, so she was a 2, maybe. She was a 2. And the next time you do it, she's a 1.2 or a 1.1. You're like, okay, we're making ground on here. Because what if you start treating her and your number's not going down? Well, then we might jump to inducing her earlier, because we're not, the treatment or management methods are not improving her situation. So we can make some of those decisions a lot earlier than waiting until she's, half conscious and be like, well, I think, maybe we should try. And it's like, well, sure. Yeah. But those, working with your vet for like a good plan on those is really, really helpful. Those meters are so cool though. I mean, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of what's going on. The keto sticks are fine. Those expire eventually. And if you have to get urine, like how do you get urine on a down sheep? So like the type of stick, the ease of use, those are all, it kind of all plays into it, where it's so simple to take like a little needle and like nick the ear so you get a little drop of blood and can do your test. Like, finger pricks on people. I mean, I'm sure people would complain about it, having to do it, but it's better than probably having to try to get pee on a down sheep. So
yeah, right on. So that's 2 solid pieces of advice: the nutritionist and a meter to measure preg tox. So thanks so much, Emily. It's been fantastic. We appreciate you coming on the podcast and giving us your insights on this important part of sheep management. And we thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of Flock Talk, please subscribe through your podcast app to receive alerts to our future episodes. And please share our podcast with your friends.
For more Ontario Sheep Farmers content, follow us on social media at Ontario Sheep Farmers on Instagram and Facebook, and visit our website at ontariosheep.org.
For anybody who is interested in having a say in our strategic planning, we have our new goal to fulfill 50% of market demand by 2040. And the board and staff are going to be holding meetings in districts coming up in March and April to talk about ways to achieve the goal and to get ideas from you, our members, on ways we can support you and ways to grow the industry, and just in general to get reaction to the goal and get your help to strategically plan how we should achieve it. So please check the Ontario Sheep Farmers website for your local district meeting time in March and April, and we look forward to seeing you.